Hi there. This is a really special episode with a dear friend and colleague of mine, Dr. John Neustadt, and he is the founder and president of Nutritional Biochemistry Incorporated. And in this conversation, you are going to learn all about the supplement industry. You're going to learn how to identify, is this supplement going to get the results that I need? And also, how do you figure out if a supplement is going to actually cause harm? Some supplements from different industries actually have contaminations of molds, bacteria, heavy metals. And so, in this conversation, we start to break some of that down and how you can be a really wise and mindful shopper and advocate of your health. And so you're also going to want to make sure that you follow Dr. John. He has a ton of resources. He is a journalist, a writer, a naturopathic doctor, a scientist, a well sought out speaker. And he was actually one of the top 10 cited authors in the world for his work. His research on integrative and functional medicine has been featured in Natural Medicine Journal, Integrative Medicine, and many others. He also has written a number of books, and my favorite is his book, Fracture Proof Your Bones. It's a must have. If you have bones, you need this book. Hint, that's all of us, right? And so definitely go and check out the show notes and follow Dr. John. And I just want to give his formal bio just so you can learn a little bit about him before we dive into the details. And so Dr. John Neustadt is the founder and president of Nutritional Biochemistry, NBI. He earned his naturopathic medical degree from Bastyr University, amazing school, where he was awarded the Founders Award for Academic and Clinical Excellence. He's published more than 100 medical articles, written 4 health and wellness books, and is now a #1 Amazon bestselling author in the field of osteoporosis. His most recent book, the one that I love especially, is Fracture Proof Your Bones, a comprehensive guide to osteoporosis. He was also the editor of the textbook Laboratory Evaluations for Integrative and Functional Medicine, which is used across the United States to train and educate physicians in using functional medicine with their patients. Welcome to the Holistic Inner Balance. I am Dr. Nicole Kane. I'm so excited you're here. And please be sure to hit the subscribe button, like the post, and if you don't mind sharing it with somebody that you know that might benefit from information about bone health and about supplements, I'd be so very grateful. All right, let's dig into the goodness. I'm so happy to be here, Dr. John. We had an incredible conversation on your podcast, and then we had so much fun talking together. We did a bonus conversation, and then I decided to ask you to be so humble to come on the show today. So thank you for being here. I love chatting with you.
It's fun and it's relaxing. And not only are we trained similarly in terms of our background, but my conversation with you on my podcast, interviewing you, for me, and I said this multiple times during the interview, it was a master class in anxiety and the work that you're doing, the work that you've done and are putting out to help other people and fix these issues. I just am so impressed with, and for me to be here and now be able to share what I've been doing professionally for the last couple of decades is really a great opportunity for me as well.
I know that your wisdom is going to be so valuable for my audience, and you're an authority in the naturopathic profession. You're a leader. And so, what a treat it is. And I always like to start conversations to learn about the who, the person that we're going to be talking to, the person behind the wisdom and the medicine, and then maybe even a little bit about your why, because you could have selected any career, and this is where you are. This is where you've landed, at least presently. So I'd love to learn a little bit about you, how you got here.
Well, first and foremost, I never saw myself in this position, 30 years ago. I was a journalist and I wanted to do more environmental writing. My first degree was in literature and writing. And I thought I was going to be a novelist at the time, ended up in journalism. I went back to school and did a post-baccalaureate degree, did a whole nother undergraduate degree in botany. I wanted to get a Bachelor of Sciences degree because with having the desire to do more investigative type journalism, look at the science, look at the environmental issues. I believed at the time, and I think it was accurate, that if I didn't have a science background, I would be more open to manipulation. I couldn't access and understand the primary data. And as I was going through school, though, I realized I really didn't want the life of a journalist anymore. So when I got out, not knowing what to do, because I didn't love bench work either, meaning working in a lab, I did some of that when I was getting my botany degree. I fell into working in high tech companies, first as a marketing writer, then as a technical writer and project manager. And I did that for several years and got pretty miserable. I love people. I love talking to people, and what I needed for my day-to-day job, I could find almost all of it on the servers, and I could literally go for days without talking to another human. And it was driving me nuts. I was in the wrong career for my personality, and I started to get sick. I started to get sick, not understanding what was going on with my body, not understanding what to do. And I went to a conventional medical doctor that was on my insurance list. I was in my 20s. I hadn't been ill before and didn't have a doctor. So I picked one, went in and saw him. Nice enough guy. But he walked in the room with his prescription pad already in his hand. And 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes into the conversation, he concluded he'll write me a prescription. He offered it and send me on my way. And I just met the guy and I had questions. I wanted to understand what was going on with my body and what I could do. And all he wanted to do was write a prescription and get on to the next patient. And I could sense his unease with my questions and his impatience. I took the prescription, but I never filled it. I left there not feeling like I had gotten the service and the attention that I needed. And I'd heard of Bastyr University, a naturopathic medical school in the Seattle area, and they had a teaching clinic just down the street. So I thought, I got nothing to lose. Let me go check out these folks and see what they have to say. And I knew a couple of students living in Seattle. I had met and known a couple of naturopathic medical students, and they all were smart and really ambitious. And I thought, well, let me see what these people have. The attending clinician for my appointment was the chief medical officer at the time and two student clinicians. I went in, it was a 45-minute appointment. They were patient with all my questions. No question was met with any derision or impatience. They educated me about what I could do. They wanted to teach me about how I could actually improve my health instead of just taking a pharmaceutical. And at the very end of the conversation, the chief medical officer, Dr. Jamie Wallace, looked at me and said, "You need to quit your job." He had figured out that in the questions he was asking me in that short amount of time, that the underlying cause, the underlying reason for what I was experiencing was because I was in such a chronically stressful environment that was not fulfilling me. It wasn't my purpose in life to be doing that. And the money was great working in high tech, but for me, it was soul crushing. I have friends in that industry who absolutely love it, but that's not my personality. And also physically debilitating. It was starting to take its physical toll on me. At the time, I think it was just that third party validation in my 20s, looking for somebody maybe who I thought was older, wiser, to give me that permission that I knew I already needed. And that was to do a career change. I'd been thinking about medical school already, and I was interested in integrative medicine. And the next week, I quit my job and started applying for medical school. And here I am, probably 25 years later, and I couldn't be happy with my career choice and what I'm doing and how fulfilling it is.
Where is it that you've landed? What are you doing with your work now?
So what I'm doing now is I'm doing a lot of educating, writing, product development. I consult with patients pro bono for free on the phone as I get requests coming in. I had my medical practice was in Montana, and as I was working with patients using nutrition, using dietary supplements, I realized quite quickly that a lot of the products on the market did not have the doses of the nutrients shown in clinical trials to work and that I needed to help my patients. So I created a company, Nutritional Biochemistry Incorporated, or NBI, to create those solutions that I needed for my patients. And I've never deviated from that devotion to quality, meaning the products have that clinical trial, those clinical trial doses, so clinicians know they work when they use them with their patients, and the consumers know that they have that quality behind the products that give demonstrable results, and have, as a result, some guarantees that no other company in the industry is offering. And because we know they work, but also because they have to work. I use them for myself. I use them on my family. I use them for, my father, my mother-in-law, my wife, friends. And I just can't live my life in any other way than treating my business, treating my professional relationships exactly like how I would want to be treated. To me, that's the golden rule of life, and it doesn't get more complicated than that. Just treat other people how I would want to be treated, and that informs every decision I make.
I'd love to unpack this. So this is fascinating to me, and how where you've been is very strongly the foundation upon which where you are and where you're going. And you began your journey doing journalism and doing research. And I love that there's this element of you that it was almost a foreshadow into studying integrative medicine because you were looking at botanical medicine, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my Bachelor of Science degree in botany, my emphasis was molecular and cellular biology of plants, and I love biochemistry. I fell in love with it. I hated it initially, chemistry, but I fell in love with it once we got to biochemistry, and I really understood how that works in our body and how nutrients affect our physical health and our emotional health. And the writing part, the research part for me is fun. I love that part of it. I love to write. I've written over 100 published articles, 4 or 5 books at this point. I can't remember how many. I'm working on the second edition right now of my book, Fracture Proof Your Bones, on bone health and osteoporosis. And through that process is a discovery of understanding. I am of the mindset and the belief that if I am able to convey a topic or a subject in a way that anyone can understand in the general public, then that's when I know that I really understand it. It's frustrating for me as a consumer in all areas of my life when I'm talking to a professional in a field that requires some technical knowledge, whether it's finance or medicine, and they're using these big jargony words that I have no idea what they're talking about. If somebody can't explain something to me simply in a way that I can understand it, to me, I don't have as much faith in them, and it's hard for me to have the quality of information that I need to make the best decision possible for me and my family. So I love writing because it allows me to make sure that I really can communicate and understand this topic well.
And I wonder if that might be one of the ingredients in that recipe for a suboptimal experience with that doctor that you're telling that story about, where he was rushed for time. He had like 5 minutes or less, but also he might not have had the answers, because I would argue that the level of detail and the training that you put yourself through to really understand and be able to distill super complicated things into something everybody can understand, that perhaps he hadn't had that level of training. Maybe that's me just wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. And what a gift that was, because it then springboarded you to go and find a place where people were a lot more like-minded. And also you got some of the answers that you needed. And so I think that's really powerful. And with the botanical piece, I kind of want to sit on this for a minute, because when I was going through my undergraduate education and learning, I studied psychobio neuroimmunology in my
Oh,
undergrad.
Fascinating. Love that.
Such amazing stuff. And we talked a little bit about botanicals and herbs. Like there's, basic plant physiology, like the stamen, and then we have like
Yeah.
the things outside. But we looked at plants more as like they can be healthy. Cows eat them, rabbits eat them, as opposed to what you were kind of hinting at is that these plants have the potential to have incredible medicinal value when processed and used properly. And so part of your journey in creating products, using products with your health, with your patient, is you had to kind of figure some of that out, find good resources. So can you talk a little bit more about that process?
Yeah, I love this topic, and I would really start with the plant itself.
Mhm.
So, coming from a background in botany, which I just absolutely fell in love with, not taxonomy, going through a book and trying, plant identification was not something that I loved. I did not enjoy that class. But when I got into plants and their physiology and their chemistry and how they operated and how we interacted with them in a field of study called economic botany, which was another area of emphasis with me, it all just took on a life of its own and an interest that I still have today. So we essentially, I mean, just at the very basic level, without plants, we would have no life on the planet. And plants capture sunlight and produce sugar and oxygen, and that gives us oxygen to breathe. And then those sugars are used to produce, they also produce energy, their own cellular energy, to produce all sorts of different chemicals. And those chemicals are the foundation of their immune system. So plants have their own immune system. When they're under stress, just like when we're under stress, they create certain chemicals. And those metabolites, they're called, can have medicinal value, as well as capturing the nutrients from the soil, bringing up and concentrating magnesium and vitamins and other minerals like iron into those plants in different parts of the plants. That then gives us the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, the other plant nutrients that our biochemistry needs to thrive and to really do a good job at. And when you look at the research and how it's grown in this area over decades, what you see is these brilliant scientists, identifying, going from the traditional botanical medicine approach, which is primarily using the whole plant. And all societies all over the world, in fact, the vast majority of the world's population still uses plant medicine as their go-to, as the first thing they do before they reach for a pharmaceutical that was created in a laboratory. And in fact, a lot of the medications we use today are derived from natural substances, either plant or animal. Digoxin, which is a medication for heart, it comes from the digitalis plant. Lisinopril, which is a drug for blood pressure. It's an ACE inhibitor that was originally from the venom of a snake. If you look at some of the antibiotics, the penicillins, they come from mold, and the list just goes on and on. They isolate, however, one molecule, like what they did with Lipitor, these statin medications, they come from red yeast rice. Instead of having the mixture of molecules that are naturally occurring in plants, even if a plant extract is standardized to a certain concentration, you still have other nutrients in there. There's an increase also risk for side effects. So conceptually, how a pharmaceutical works is it takes over your biochemistry and they target one pathway. When you're looking at plant medicine and botanical medicine, it's a mixture, a combination of all these natural chemicals in the plants that are working synergistically. And the safety profile with these, when used properly, is excellent. so excellent that they are regulated under the US FDA Dietary Supplement Act, price precisely because we're already getting a lot of these nutrients in our diets, and then we can supplement with them to get enhanced benefits where we need them. And I make those decisions based on published clinical trials and basic research that shows how these plants push our biochemistry, push our health in the direction it needs to go.
This is great. I'd love to unpack this a little more with maybe a specific plant example, if you will. And so maybe you have a plant that you like that. So let's say that I'm either anxious or struggling to sleep, or maybe I'm having some gut anxiety. So I can't digest, kind of IBS type symptoms. If we could pick one plant and then maybe unpack a little bit about maybe some of those chemicals, and not all plants and all supplements are created equal. And then also plant companions, things that would go with the plant for maximum value. And so I want to unpack that, and I want to give the why, and then let's do the unpacking. The why that I'm asking that question is because I do see a lot of research where we have an opportunity to be a little bit more informed about plant ecology, about wildcrafting plants, using plants where some brilliant researchers just don't understand the plant. They're looking at individual constituents or chemicals, and then they're doing studies on just that, and then creating these conclusions that may not accurately reflect the plant. As an example, kava kava, there's a lot of articles. They're like, watch out for liver enzymes rising. So then you have all these people that are frightened of using this wonderful plant because there is an article that may have had a result that could be fully explained in other ways. So that was a long volley up, but tell me what you're thinking.
I think that there are different ways to approach this question, and different ways that people do approach using plants and botanical extracts clinically, and even in formulating products for sale to consumers or through healthcare provider channels. One is the more traditional approach of taking plants, whole plants, and creating tinctures with them, using different substances, whether it's an alcohol or glycerin, depending on the type of substance that the plant is soaked in. So first the plants get cleaned, and then what's called macerated. They get pushed, kind of crushed, and then they're left to soak in a solvent. And depending on the type of solvent that's used, you're going to get different constituents of the plant that is pulled out of that plant and concentrated in the liquid that then gets bottled and typically consumed with a dropper, mixed with water or just directly on the tongue. And that's one way to think about it. And you can get some consistency in the quality of those extracts as long as the plants are coming ideally from the same source, grown in the same soil, in the same environment, because plants are very sensitive to their environments, just like we all are. And depending on the environment, they will produce different types of chemicals, and depending on what's in the soil, they can even concentrate toxic metals into their stems and leaves and roots. So that's how I think about that, and that is not that's a totally acceptable, great way to approach using plants. I know a lot of colleagues that do that, and they get phenomenal results. Another way is to take the whole plant and just crush it and put it into capsules and take it that way. A third way, which is more in line with how my brain works and how I've formulated products, is to look at clinical trials that have used those plants and identify how those plants were processed. What was the plant, not just the plant itself, like ashwagandha, but did they use the whole plant? Was it standardized to a specific concentration of a molecule With respect to ashwagandha, it's often standardized to with analytes. And then I look at the results of that and see, are there additional clinical trials that are supporting that? And if so, that's what I then use to formulate my products with, because I'm not doing tinctures, liquid extracts, those sorts of things. And then I look for synergistic effects with other nutrients for specific conditions I'm working with. So let's take anxiety, for example. Anxiety is a complicated issue, as you know. You're more of an expert on that than I am, or anyone who I know. But when I think about anxiety, there are a few issues and challenges clinically that I've had to address with patients. One is that overactive sympathetic immune system or nervous system, that they're just on sympathetic overload. They are in a high stress situation, either physically in a high stress situation or just mentally feeling stressed, and their adrenal glands are getting stressed. They may not be sleeping because of that anxiety. So there might be an insomnia component. There could be a GI component with IBS, as you mentioned, but not necessarily. And there could be end up with muscle tension, which creates even more problems, and it becomes this feed forward type of system where then they're experiencing these issues, which then make them even more anxious, and they don't know how to break that cycle. So when I was creating my formula, Calm and Clear, Calm plus Clear is the name of the product, I then looked at all of those different issues that I had recognized, and then looked for clinical trials showing that the nutrient helped regulate that part of the person's biochemistry, or had clinical trials on specifically on people with anxiety. And I like to use a synergistic blend of different plants and extracts and nutrients like magnesium, because they work together to help the biochemistry in the body, which is a network of all these different interactions. It's holistic, help in a more holistic way to approach those biochemical challenges, the nervous system challenges that somebody's having, to calm the whole system down. So for example, with my Calm and Clear product, it's got ashwagandha in it, it's got jujube in it, it's got magnolia bark extract in it. These are all different plants. It's got L-theanine, which comes from green tea. It's got magnesium in it, and others. And we guarantee that within 30 minutes of taking it, somebody will start to feel calmer. And then it has longer acting adrenal support in it. And I'm not a big believer with complicated situations like anxiety is, that is the only thing people should do. They shouldn't just be taking pills. They need a comprehensive approach. But I believe supplementation is an excellent part of a larger approach that people can take.
I really love that. I love the importance to emphasize that it's a part of a plan. It isn't the end of the conversation
It's
for a
not the
plan.
plan, it's part of
It's
the plan.
yeah, yeah. Oh, so many people call and they're like, "Dr. Kane, just tell me what supplement to take." And I'm like, "Well, we could do that, but it would be such a disservice." I love that you brought up the language of synergy. And in fact, I just got a message this morning of someone who were expressing they have really low vitamin D, but every time they take vitamin D, they become more anxious. And we know in the clinical trials that vitamin D supplementation on its own can deplete magnesium, which is important for relaxing the nervous system, relaxing the muscles, making all those chemical pathways go. And so I think synergy is really important because these plants don't grow. You don't see just a field of dandelions and no other plants. You see a field of dandelions with all sorts of other things. And then there's nitrogen in the soil and magnesium in the soil. And then there's water and lightning and electricity, all sorts of different components. And I'm trying to think as you were talking, I was trying to think of a good analogy for synergy that someone could wrap their mind around where they know if they have one thing and then another thing and they taste it or consume it separately, it'll be different as opposed to if they combine it together. My best is like making cookies, but do you have an example that you like to use?
I've never been asked the question before or thought of that in terms of food or taste.
Yeah.
No, that's really fascinating. I don't.
Yeah, so if we combined, yeah, so like, if you just eat eggs, here's an example. I'm just going to eat a whole bunch of kavalactones, just a whole bunch of kavalactones. I'm just eating eggs, but the outcome that I want is to feel like I had a delicious dopamine boosting cookie. If I just eat the yolk of the egg, I'm going to be confused as to, well, why am I not getting the result that I want? Well, in order to have the experience of a cookie, you need synergistic ingredients. So you also need the flour and the sugar and maybe the chocolate chips. But the chocolate chips matter because if you get milk chocolate chips, it's going to create a different flavor than if you use 80% dark chocolate. So the ingredients that you're putting together matter. And I've talked about this quite a lot with psychobiotics, where what we traditionally used to do is just sort of throw a bunch of probiotics into a formula. We know how they work individually, but then when you introduce them together as a group, we don't know if they're going to get along. We don't really know what the effect has been unless that company has gone to the 10 extra steps to then study the formulation itself. And so this is the conversation about synergy. And I think that it's perhaps not as well understood. And I appreciate that you brought that up when talking about I'm going to put in magnolia and, theanine and these other components.
In terms of synergy, because you mentioned vitamin D, I think it's easier for me to wrap my head around that when we're talking about individual nutrients, because that's how the biochemistry works and has been very well defined. So nutrients have discrete jobs, but not the only one job in the body. So, for example, magnesium has is involved in over 250 biochemical reactions in the body. Iron over 200. Vitamin D has multiple roles, both for increasing intestinal calcium absorption, for helping to regulate blood calcium, to help with the nervous system and the immune system. And the analogy, or not the analogy, the example that I like with nutrients, specifically vitamin D, is vitamin D combined with vitamin K2. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of misinformation out there about vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is a category of nutrients. There's not just one. There are different types of vitamin K2. Commercially available ones are MK4 and MK7. And every product on the market out there that has a vitamin D3 plus K2 combination has the MK7 in it. And mine is the only product out there. I have several different bone support products that have been on the market for almost 20 years now. The most recent version of that product, it has no calcium, but it has the MK4 clinical trial dose of 45 milligrams per day plus vitamin D3 in it. And those are the only two ingredients. Why MK4 and not MK7? I think that it's important when people are evaluating dietary supplements, they ask about what is the most relevant endpoint or things that was studied. So with a lot of companies, they will give you, specifically with bone support, data showing that their product improves bone density. Well, what we know is that that's just a number on a test. And so we want to know, has it actually worked to reduce fractures? And what we know is MK4, 45 milligrams per day, is the only type of vitamin K that has been shown to do that. MK7 has never been shown to improve bone density. It only slows down how fast somebody loses bone density. And it's never been shown in any clinical trial to reduce fractures. With MK4, it's been shown to improve bone density. There were 25 clinical trials on it, but more importantly, reduce fractures by over 70%. And when you combine the MK4 with vitamin D3, multiple clinical trials have shown that that combination improves bone density more than just the MK4 by itself. So it's that synergistic combination that's important. And anything else that people are putting in their products is just theory, it's theoretical. And so asking those questions about, has it been shown, for example, If we're talking back to about anxiety, hasn't been shown in a clinical trial to improve the anxiety on perhaps what's called a VAS score, the visual analog scale. Hasn't been shown in a study to reduce the feeling or the symptoms of anxiety instead of just changing a number on a test like a decrease in cortisol, which is important. It's perhaps one piece of a larger puzzle, but also what are the clinical benefits? How does clinical benefits mean? How does it make you feel? What did they test? How it affects the person as a human, not just a number on a test. And for osteoporosis and bone health, that most dangerous effect of that condition is breaking a bone. So we want to know, have the nutrients been shown in clinical trials to maintain strong bones, which means that they've looked at the clinical trials have looked at fractures and have determined that it reduces fractures, whatever that nutrient is. But the research is so strong. And again, this goes back to the quality of the research and the manufacturing on my formulations, that we offer what we call the strong bones guarantee, that we guarantee that with any of my bone support products, there are 3 versions of them, we guarantee that within 6 months, somebody will see their bone density stabilize or improve. But more importantly, the products will maintain strong bones. So if somebody breaks a bone, we'll refund their money for all qualifying purchases between their 2 bone density test results.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. Have you seen studies on, so I know we look at DEXA scans, and so patients are recommended, get your DEXA scan, make sure you're up to date with that. I like to add in an entelopeptide test so I can see how quickly bone breakdown is occurring. Have you seen clinical trials that shows if any of these nutrients or products are actually slowing down bone breakdown in that way?
So yeah, first of all, clinicians have reported to me. I prefer CTX, but
Uh-huh.
NTX can also be tested.
Uh-huh.
MK4 and vitamin D and calcium have been shown to reduce CTX, which is a breakdown product of bone collagen, connective tissue in bone. And so yes, the products that I created do push that biochemistry in a healthy direction, and people should see that CTX marker decrease. But this may be a little off topic. I'm not a huge fan of testing CTX and NTX. You have to be very cautious with interpreting them because they will change depending on the time of year. They're higher in the CTX, for example, and NTX are higher in the winter months than in the summer months because there's more bone remodeling happening in the winter. If a woman's still having her period, then depending on the time of month, that will affect the lab values. So if they've exercised in the 72 hours prior, all of that has to be taken into account when interpreting those test results. And so I'm just very cautious with that.
Yeah, that's so wise, and I do really appreciate that nuance, especially now as people are doing more self-advocacy and going and doing like walk-in labs or going to coaches who
Yeah.
don't maybe have medical training and are trying to order and understand these labs. I really appreciate that clinical nuance that you bring to the conversation. So what's coming to mind, which is kind of what I was really excited to focus with you on today, and I feel like we've started the process, is how can someone listening to this conversation understand, how do I assess a dietary supplement? Am I getting my money's worth? Is this good quality? My doctor likes these brands, but like, does it really matter? And so you gave a really brilliant example about the vitamin K and how there's different forms, and you want to make sure that you're getting the proper one that's clinically backed. But wow, that sounds like a lot of labor and PubMed digging for your average busy consumer. So how do we know? Tell us more.
Well, fortunately, with that example, I've done the work, so people don't have
Yes.
to. And all the citations and the clinical trials, that they're all available for free on my website, nbihealth.com. but I've developed, I've taught people how to identify what are quality dietary supplements, what are quality companies, and there are a couple of ways that you can just quickly ascertain that. So the first thing is look at their any of their products that have minerals in them. Oftentimes, that'll be a multivitamin and mineral formula. Look at the copper, the magnesium, the zinc. If any of them say oxide, they're in the oxide form. That's not the best quality formulation because your body cannot absorb minerals in the oxide form very well. You only absorb, for example, about 2 to 4% of magnesium when it is in the form of magnesium oxide, and the rest is just going right through you. And in fact, in high doses, we use magnesium oxide clinically as a laxative.
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that your body can actually absorb them. Just because it says 100 milligrams of magnesium, if it says magnesium oxide, then maybe you're getting 2 or 4 milligrams absorbed into your body. So look for other more absorbable forms of those minerals, citrate, malate, gluconate. All of those are much more absorbable. And then you want to look at the vitamin B12 and folic acid that are in them. You want to make sure they're the methylated forms, methylcobalamin or methyl tetrahydrofolate. You'll see methyl on there. If it says methyl, that's the bioavailable form. That's what your body can actually use. And so that is going to be a superior product. It's also more expensive to manufacture with that, but that is the better raw material. Then when you're looking at, maybe condition specific types of products, like we talked about, bone health, you can always ask the question, first of all, identify what your goal is. Is your goal to change a number on a test? I would say that's probably not the best thing to try and focus on. The best thing to focus on is think about what is it that you're trying to prevent. Now, first of all, dietary supplements are not approved by the FDA to prevent any disease. But clinical trials on nutrients can show that they are very effective at preventing certain situations from occurring because they are powerfully promoting and enhancing our biochemical function. So with bone health, the most important thing is fractures. If you have osteoporosis and you break a hip, there's up to a 36% chance that you're going to be dead within a year. So that's really what you want to ask. Are there clinical trials showing that it reduces fractures? Now, you can go to that trouble if you want and email the company, and hopefully they'll reply to you. You can also then look at the citations that they're using and go do all that research, but that's a ton of work. If a company doesn't reply and give you an answer, that to me is the answer, that
Yeah.
they are really not the best quality or have you and your health at the center of their decisions. And it could be that, look, sometimes emails get lost, overlooked, maybe try and write them a second time, give them a second chance. It's up to you. But then the other thing to do that I tell people is ask for a certificate of analysis. So every manufacturer in the United States, before we release a product to market, that manufacturing batch has to have, by law, a certificate of analysis. A certificate of analysis shows you that what is on the label is what's in the bottle, and then it's tested for microbial contamination, bacteria, yeast, and fungal spores. But then there are some companies like my company that we spend even more money to do additional testing. We test every finished lot for toxic metals, and we send out some of our products we're sending out to third-party labs to just verify and make sure that there's no gluten in there, there's no dairy in there, there's no soy in there, for specific populations. Like this is for our bone support populations, where a lot of people who have celiac disease can then get osteoporosis. And so we want to make sure we have a product that they can take and feel confident with. And so you can ask for the certificate of analysis. If they won't give that to you, there's something wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When people ask for a certificate of analysis from MBI, I've instructed my staff to send it to them. Why not? We have nothing to hide. I'm very proud of what I've created. I'm proud of the quality. And any company who is proud of that, I think should be okay with sharing that information.
So powerful. That's a great hack is, and I have a lot of clients who use essential oil products that the companies also create supplements and vitamins. And they're always asking me, does X, Y, and Z, do you think you like their multivitamin? And I actually did that process with them. And I feel like that's such a great reminder because it's been a really long time. And so I'm curious, knowing what you know now, after having gone through all of this life and creating this amazing mission, creating this supplement company, writing these books and these articles, and you, by the way, everyone, he's like Dr. John's at conferences and he's speaking and teaching, and you have your own podcast. If you could take the one most important thing that you've learned over these years, and you could go back and follow that timeline to that younger version of yourself who was sitting in that doctor's office and feeling so frustrated and overwhelmed about his health. And the doc came in with the script pad, and your younger self just knew it was probably not going to be the answer. What would you want him to know?
That's a great question. Before I answer that, I want to say one more thing, if I may, about the
Of
dietary
course.
supplements. There have
Yes.
been multiple studies that have looked at botanicals in dietary supplements.
Mm.
A lot of these raw materials are coming from overseas, a lot of the plants like India. And these studies are showing that the products that are on store shelves, specifically, are looking at Ayurvedic type formulations, these plant, whole plant formulations, are contaminated with toxic doses of heavy metals.
Yeah.
And that
Mhm.
is a big risk and something that's a real problem in the dietary supplement industry. One of the ways that I avoid that is by using these standardized extracts. So we have, and by testing every raw material for metals and every finished product for metals. So be aware of that. That's why this quality control, this consistency in sourcing and manufacturing is so critical for people's health, because there are in the medical research, in published medical journals, articles detailing people ending up in the hospital with toxic metal poisoning because of they've been consuming high amounts of toxic metals in dietary supplements that frankly should have never been on the market. It is a problem with the industry. I hope the FDA will address that. But that's one of the challenges. So making sure that you're buying from a reputable company, making sure you're verifying whether it's through a professional you trust, like Dr. Nicole or myself, or asking for the certificate of analysis. You just have to have a level of it doesn't even have to be sophistication, I would say, because you don't have to become an expert in all the science. You just have to learn a few questions to ask.
Thank
Now,
you for thank you for that. That was really, really important.
with respect to me sitting in that doctor's office in my 20s and looking back, what would I say now? And I love this question. I think the biggest, because I have a son now who's 19, and he's sort of off trying to explore the world, and he's in college and he's going to figure out what he wants to do. And I was a little older than that, but I was figuring it out also. And I think that I would say in retrospect that every block in the road, everything that I've tried to do that hasn't worked out how I had hoped, was merely the universe redirecting me to where I actually needed to be headed. It was putting me on the right direction of the true path that I needed to be on. And so, in that sense, I would have told myself that what you're experiencing now is a gift from God, and you are being put on the path. It's showing you that where you were is not where you need to be, and what your purpose and calling is in this life to do the highest good.
I feel that in my soul. That's such a beautiful such a beautiful way to talk with yourself, to be with yourself, to see the journey, because I think it can be overwhelming when we're on the road and we realize, "Oh my gosh, I'm off trail. I have soul sickness. This job, this whatever is going on in my life feels like it's just sucking the life out of me and I need to make a change." And I think sometimes we can feel like it's too late, or it can feel like I don't feel like it's even possible for me to start making the changes that I need to live the kind of life and to feel the what I want to feel. And you give a message of hope that, you know what, you're here, you're supposed to be here, you're having this awareness, you're getting this information, and with that, you'll make changes one step at a time. But I love the emphasis on the honoring of the be here now and the journey. I love that. Thank you.
May I share an exercise that I do with patients every once in a while?
Yes,
And
please.
I learned this years ago, and I did it on myself, and I ended up in tears when I did it. And I have somebody sit and imagine, have something to write with, a journal, a pen, or a pencil. Imagine, focus on something that's challenging that you're not happy with in your life, how you're feeling, what you're doing, and imagine what that will feel like in a year if you don't make any changes. Imagine looking at yourself in the mirror and how you will feel looking at yourself. Imagine the type of role model, what you'll be modeling for your children and your family if you have those, and how you will feel if you haven't made any changes. How will you feel physically in your body, your energy, your mood, your excitement about life? And then if you don't make any changes, for 3 years, what's that going to look like? How is that going to feel? And go through and really visualize that yourself. And in 5 years, how will you feel looking at yourself in the mirror? How will you feel in your own body? How will you feel as a role model? And then sit in that, and then open your eyes and write all that down, exactly what that felt like. And then do the opposite. Close your eyes, imagine, focus on what it is that you want to change, and or what it is that's giving you some challenges in your life. And imagine in 1 year if you do change it and it is different and you see yourself differently. How are you going to feel looking in the mirror? What will your self-esteem be like? Your confidence? How will you feel as a role model? How will you feel in your own body? And then 3 years, and then 5 years down the road, and then open your eyes and write all of that down. That, to me, has been very powerful in helping awakening people to a visceral understanding of where their life is headed, and how, if they just started now and focused on those changes, what they could really experience, how phenomenal life can really be. That doesn't mean the change is always easy, but in that process of focusing on what it is that you want to achieve, who you want to be, not even physically necessarily, things you want to have, but how do you want to be as a human? How do you want to live your life? That, the more detail somebody can see that and visualize that, I find the more motivated they're going to be to stick with what could be sometimes challenging work, to get the answers, to find the solutions, to work towards creating their ideal future.
Oh, goodness. Dr. John, that is such a gift. I'm going to do that exercise today, everybody. I hope that you will too. And we'd love to hear what came up for you. Go and find us on Instagram, or you can also get involved inside of the Holistic Wellness Collective, where I interact with people on a day-to-day basis. So you can definitely get involved there. And be sure to follow Dr. John. So can you tell us how people can find you? And then, of course, I'll include the links in the show notes.
The best way is at my website, nbihealth.com. nbihealth.com. There are links to my social media channels on there, a lot of articles, information. Just search for any topic that you want. There's probably going to be an article, at least touching on that. My products are available on there. Podcasts are available on there as well.
Oh, it's such a gift, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for what you've done for this community. And I know I'm going to be getting that Calm supplement and the osteoporosis support. Like, I need all of it. So thank you. And I'll report back, everyone, how I'm feeling. It's probably going to be amazing. All right. Well, thanks for being here. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, John, that was great. Thank you. And we are right on time. And like I said, I'll record the intro and the outro later. And then I'll have my team reach out when we have a launch date, which shouldn't be too far in the horizon.
Sounds great. And when you send that over to me when it launches, any assets, I'll get that to my marketing team and they'll promote it.
That sounds wonderful.
Okay.
You're such a gift. Thank
Thank you.
you.
So are you. Thank you. Loved my time again with you. Take care. All
Thanks.
right.
Bye.
Bye.